Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the 35th edition of the International Documentary Film Festival here in Munich, to our special section DOK.fest at home, to the section Panorama, where we will screen the film WORKHORSE by director Cliff Caines. And I want to welcome also the director of photography, Randall. And I want to say hello to one of the protagonists, Shannon. Hello, everybody. Hi.
Good morning.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing?
As good as can be.
Well.
Yeah.
As good as can be. And what sort of weather have you got right now? Is it a Corona favorable weather?
Yesterday was very nice. Sunday, everybody was, social distancing in the park. Today it feels like 3 degrees Celsius today.
So it's better for social distancing if it's chilly and. So I want to thank you for this wonderful film in black and white. It's a film about workhorses. And my first question would be to you, Cliff. How did you discover the world of your protagonists?
Yeah, it was really, in my everyday travels, about 2.5, 3 hours northeast of Toronto, is an area called the Kawarthas in Ontario. It was a place I've just become familiar with. I'm from quite a lot more north in Ontario, about 24 hours driving north from Toronto in northwestern Ontario. So I had sort of started exploring with some friends through, it's sort of a cottage country and farm country mix. And I came across in the fall, I had always been interested and known of fall fairs, at the harvest to celebrate fall fairs. So I had went with, my partner and a group of friends, and we, for the first time, they wanted to go see a horse pull, and I'd never heard of what a horse pull was. And it was best described to me as a tractor pull, but with horses. And I thought, wow, I have to see this. I've never seen it before. I wasn't that familiar with farming. I come from a mining community, but I do understand, and part of my work is really about looking at, rural life and labor. And it was, all of those things came together, and it very much intrigued me. And the first time I saw it was at the Kinmount Fair, which again is about 2.5 hours northeast of Toronto, and seeing these giant horses, these beasts of burden, they're teams of 3,500 pounds to combined with, a human being tethered to them, and just gently, ever so gently, and that was the amazing thing, they would rear up to 10,000 pounds on a dead weight sled, and they would just explode with electricity. And it was just, the spectacle alone, it just immediately made me think of the entire history of our relationship with horses. And I thought, wow, I would be interested. So I approached the winner of that evening, Mike Wessel, who's a veteran horse puller, who's not with us today. They have yet to see the film, actually. We were just about to roll it out when the pandemic hit. So we're hoping, maybe later on in the year. There's 3 sort of contexts in the film. The horse pull was the first that I encountered, and it became the end, the denouement of the film. And then it was through word of mouth. I started just thinking about how were horses used in Canada, in the world, in our history of industrial and commercial development, and why are they relegated now to pulling in this spectacle at once a celebration, and then at another time this sort of demonstration of the power of the horse, both in utility, and then you think right away of plowing, of course, of farms. And I thought, oh, well, outside of Amish and Mennonite communities, are there any individuals still doing this? And that community is very tight-knit. It's very intimate, and I very quickly found one of the premier farmers in Ontario and in Canada who still works with a very rare breed called Suffolk punch horses, which are they're designed differently. And that's what really struck me, is that the use of the horse is very much about what they're doing. So from pulling, they're essentially the strong men and women of horses. They're these giant muscular horses. And so are the farming horses, but they're very specific. Instead of a burst of energy, they need to walk the marathon and plow the entire field.
The long distance runners, right?
That's
so
right.
If you say it's a very narrow community, what are we talking about? How many working horses exist in Canada right now? Do you know? Art, maybe?
Yeah, this is a great question for Art.
Outside the Mennonite and the Amish community, there's not a lot of working horses. There's a lot of riding horses. And I would say the majority of the riding horses are pasture ornaments. They're not even ridden. So the Mennonite community, even within the Mennonite community, they're not using the workhorse that much. They're gone to equipment. And if they don't have the equipment, or their order doesn't allow, I guess, equipment, they contract out the farming, the harvesting, and the cultivation, and the seeding, and all that. So the work horses are used less and less all the time, even within the community. And it's really too bad, as the work horses being used in the logging industry, which I did for 40 years. You won't find a person taking that on as a full-time occupation in Ontario.
I saw on your website that you retired. So after doing the film, now you're a film star?
Yeah.
You're not logging anymore? No.
It's a great way to end a career.
The question would be, when you saw the film, was it a surprise for you to see you like that? Or what did reflect on you? I mean, did Cliff catch the essence, or is it like, how is this film for you to see it like that after 40 years of logging?
I think Cliff and Ryan really caught the essence of the horses in the forest. I think that it was just a great portrayal of what I've done for 40 years. It was the end of the fifth generation of horse loggers. My 4 generations grandfather left Ireland during the potato famine and came to Canada and became a horse logger, and so we followed through to my generation, but my boys or my daughter have no interest in the business, so it all come to a screeching end, and Cliff and Ryan caught that.
What a pity about your children not taking it on, right? Maybe the grandchildren will take it on.
Yeah,
but
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Well, so talking about the essence and the aesthetics of the film, I mean, this film is in black and white. It's very elaborate. It's very, very neat. How did you approach the aesthetics? I mean, was there like a relationship to the photography of the 30s, of the Great Dust Bowl, the American Depression, the pictures of Barbara Lang? Was there some influence by that, or how did you know the film would look like when you started, or was there a surprise evolving?
I can let Ryan take this on. We had some lengthy discussions, and it really started with the first images of horses, which is of course Muybridge. And then thinking about labor, and how did we photograph horses with Etienne, Jules, and Marie, for example. And so as early as that, the first photographic instances, and then really looking, Dorothea Lange, the great photographer in the Depression in the U.S., are very, and I think Chuck Jones, for example, as well. Some of these, yeah, exactly. So I'll let Ryan talk about that relationship and how we developed it.
Yeah, well, Cliff and I have been working together for I don't even want to count the years. Nearing 20 years now. So our visual kind of back and forth is almost nonverbal, and like we pass some images back and forth. And we go out and shoot a lot of tests. We went out with some DSLRs to a lot of horse polls before we even got to principal photography, and kind of were shooting and getting a sense of how to manage the scales between like the horse and then the person, and then how do you frame all that and what our lens choices were going to be, and kind of work backwards in a technical sense from there. In that kind of workflow, we were working with DSLRs in a pseudo log type of capture. So we were monitoring in black and white very early on. So that kind of aesthetic from the get-go was kind of baked in. And then we developed some LUTs and lookup tables that we put on our monitors as we went into photography on the main cameras and lenses. Yeah.
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 I think that.
Was there a surprise in one moment? I mean, did you know, how shall I put it? How did the film evolve aesthetically and dramaturgically? I mean, were there moments you wouldn't expect, like the farming family or?
Yeah. I think because the chronology in the film follows the chronology of the history of the horse. However, our chronology in filming, we filmed with the horse pullers first, and then we started filming with the farm, the farmers, which is about 2.5 hours west of Toronto, in the London area. In St. Thomas, is really close to St. Thomas. But we didn't want to leave the farm. We sort of moved away from the spectacle of the horse pulling and to this really, this beautiful pastoral effect of being at this farm, which is organic. Ken Lang, who we were introduced through the community, is also a veteran, 30, 40 years working with soil, working with horses, specifically, since the 1980s, as he discusses in the film. His family, sort of embraced that. They've now, interesting enough, this question that you asked, Art, of the succession became the theme. That's something we didn't go into it because of the tests that we did with the horse pulls. We spent probably 3/4 of a year filming with them and designing sort of how do we work with the scale, and how do we translate the scale of these horses, the power of the horses, and also more importantly the intimacy of the relationship between the horses and their teamsters, these horse whisperers. And I think that was the biggest challenge for us. And I think for us it was really just trial and error and trial and error and trial and error. And then when we finally got to working with Art, which was a very short period comparatively, we really only had a few shoots with Art in the winter. But what a beautiful way to end for us for filming, but also what a beautiful way to begin the film. And looking at maybe, the history of horses, workhorses specifically in Canada and the world, really it starts with, forestry. And then, it goes into farming, and then it evolves to where it is today, where the relevance of the horse is very different. And that's something, that history that Ryan and I talked about a lot, and we wanted a very unique look for each individual teamster and context of work. And the film starts from wide and goes to close and close and close. And it goes from much more strict. Yeah.
And it also separates the people from it opens a space, right? I mean, at the end, you have the horse pull, the people, the winners, and they're like separated from their environment. So suddenly it opens and they're like taken off they are on this popular cultural thing going on, and they just won the prize, but they're like separated from, they're like alienated. But actually, I wanted to ask, but you can. This would be a question for Ryan. But I would also like to know: did you try to work with these animals? I mean, did you go for known experience with the horses? And did it change? How was it? And did it change something in your life to have this experience with them?
I think so. I was probably like Cliff when we started shooting. I was fairly uncomfortable around horses. And we were put in the situation where we got quite close. And then by the end of it, I shot another film since where I was close to horses, and I was perfectly fine them getting close. And so I got really comfortable with horses quite quickly. Yeah, going back on there's something I wanted to say about the last question about aesthetics. There's a seasonality that played out in the shooting of it. Where we're trying to support that idea of cyclical generations and information being passed from generation to generation with the cycles of the climate or the weather of the seasons. Sorry. that we start off in winter and then we move into the rainy spring and then the planting season, the fall season, and then into the fall fair and the spectacle. Yeah.
And that's something that worked out, you know, it's something we hung on to with the editorial, the structuring of the project, you know, to really reinforce the seasonality of it. And starting in, I think, in the winter season with art, which is, you know, a time that, you know, you do generally, historically speaking, and Art can speak to it more so, is something that's done in the winter. And in our discussions, it's Art and his family would do farming in the summer and then the logging in the winter, you know, because of the draft and the resistance is less with the logs. And, you know, that was even difficult to translate. The weight of those logs is as much as the weight of the sleds that are being, you know, pulled in competition. And I really, for me, it was really about that comparison too. And what was always amazing working with Art is I was just stunned at how little and how long the relationship had been between Art and his horses, and how effortless it seemed to us that he could just barely speak to them and they would know exactly where to be. And he had trained them so well. And I don't know, maybe Art can speak to that, but it's, you know, and these huge weights. Is at one point in the film, there's this giant tree that they take down.
Yeah.
It's this series of challenges. And it's something that Art just took, you know, did so effortlessly. And we were just in awe of what we were watching.
Yeah.
I needed, from my horses, I need both that explosive power that's in the horse pulls and the sustained effort that in farming. Because, you know, the horses need to get those big trees down or need to get that big log out, but they have to continue working 8 hours a day. And the big one is, and I said in the film, is the trust that you develop with the horses. So it truly is a team, and it's a 3-part team. I'm very much part of the team, and yeah, it's just so comfortable working with horses. It's like dancing with your wife of 30 years. You know, it's very comfortable. You know, as opposed to dancing with a stranger.
Well, that's so beautiful. So with these words, I would like to say goodbye to you and wish you luck for your next projects. I read that you're continuing examining the relationship between rural communities and industry. So we're looking forward to see your next film, hopefully next year or here in Munich, and hopefully we meet.
Yeah.
This film is also nominated for the Audience Award donated by the Bavarian Public Television and Dreisat. So please, this is for our audience, of course, don't forget to vote. And well, enjoy and come back and hope to see you. Bye.